Thank you, Mark. Could have used that even before the election. That would have helped me even more. But thank you. No, it's, when you come to intractable problems that we have in the region, one of the places you first turn to is the Institute of Politics. And Mark mentioned, our good friend who just passed away recently. When you think about the work that had been done with the Institute over the years, it really is, whether it's on economic development, whether it's on transportation, whether it's on environment, when any of the issues that we deal with, the Institute has always been a safe place, I think, where political discussions can happen in a bipartisan manner. They can happen at all levels of government, at all levels of the community, whether it be the business community, the philanthropic community, our universities, et cetera, come together to try to find solutions. And when you see some of these numbers, they're stark. They're stark and they're upsetting on many, many levels. And as I look around today, I see so many of my newly elected county council and county commissioners from throughout southwestern Pennsylvania. Those of you who just got reelected just did your budgets. Those of you who are coming in new are going to be looking at budgets throughout the year in which you deal with it. And I can tell you, as county council just passed the budget the other day, 32%, a third of our dollars are going to criminal justice. Way more than needs to be happening. 42% of the money we collect through property tax, and that's what our biggest funding is, as all counties have, because that's what we've been given by the legislature, comes from, 42% goes to the criminal justice system. And Mark talked about some of the figures that are there that are just absolutely make no sense. Now, I come to this job as an engineer. So I don't come as somebody who's worked in the criminal justice system, from the law enforcement, from the legal background. I'm a numbers guy. It's what I learned in school, and it's what I do now. I know when things are going down, meaning crime has gone down over the last 25 years. Violent crime in Allegheny County has gone down 41% in the last 25 years. Property crime has gone down 46% in the last 25 years. So why are we incarcerating more people? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense, and it is not fair that in a nation in which the population of African Americans make up 13% of the population, that 34% of the people in our jails nationwide are African Americans. Well, it's shame on us. In Allegheny County, it's even worse, because we reflect the population of the country, that 13% of our population is African American, but almost half, 49% of the people in our jail and in our prisons are people of African American population. That's wrong, and we got to make changes. So I turned to two people who I have a lot of respect for that could solve it. I knew I couldn't solve it. It's not what I do, but I know there are people that can solve that. You go to the Institute of Politics because they do really, really good things. And before Mark took this job, he had a different job, much bigger job. He was the chancellor. And one of the problems we had in this region a couple decades ago was around economic growth. And what the chancellor did, partnering with his friends down at CMU, is really revitalize what Pittsburgh has done by coming together and forming economic growth. So now that he's the Institute of Politics, he can do some of these broader policy decisions. I also decided to turn to a former U.S. attorney for the Western Pennsylvania district, Fred Tiemann. So Fred had been on the front lines all throughout Western Pennsylvania, not just Pittsburgh, not just Allegheny County, but throughout the whole region, in dealing with this issue for 8 years as the U.S. attorney. So getting these two folks involved with their level of expertise and the level of people that they could bring to the table was very, very helpful. Now, in Pittsburgh, we're proud of the things that we do. And one of the things we do really well is work together. Bring all of the stakeholders together. Because this just can't be done by a law that county council can pass or an edict that the county executive can give, because there's a lot of stakeholders, as Mark mentioned, a lot of silos. Obviously the courts. And we've had great participation and great cooperation from our courts. I see former President Judge Manning, who's here with us today, and President Judge Clark has also been at the table and working with us on how to solve this problem. Our friends at the magistrate level, our friends in the public defender's office. I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. But all of the stakeholders coming together. And the county manager, I look at him over there and I see Willie, you know, we give more things to Willie McCain and he solves all these wonderful things. But I noticed an air of envy in his eye today when he saw those New York City numbers. Because I know in his mind he was saying, okay, we have 2,400 people in our jail. We used to be at 2,800. But look what New York City did when they went down to, what's 3,300? Make that in Pittsburgh, Willie, what that number is 600. Can you imagine what our jail would be like if we get it down to 600? I see the wardens over smiling as well, or Warden Harper, between the two of them. But these are the goals that we can reach. We can reach these goals if we do things the right way. Because let me throw another number out there, because again, I'm a numbers guy. 75% of the people who are in our jail are in there because they have a substance abuse or a mental health issue. Think about that. That's why they're in jail, because they've got a substance abuse or a mental health issue. Is that who we should be incarcerating? Is that the best use of our tax dollars? Should we be reaching into to the taxpayers' pockets and taking money out of their pockets to put people in jail because they have a mental health or a substance abuse issue? It makes no sense. So I'm so delighted that our friends from New York City, thank you, Chief Justice, for being here today to talk about some of the reforms that were done there. We know their football team isn't all that great. Maybe both of them, I know. So you can learn from us about how to do football. We can learn from you on some of the things that you've done when it comes to criminal justice. It takes a lot of partners. I can tell you one of the partners that have been forth has been our public defender. Mark talked about that as well. And I'm proud of the work that former public defender Elliot Housey done, and now Matt Dugan is doing some of the same things. They started an initiative called, what's it called? Project Reset. I should know my names. I should know them. Project Reset says expungement. How do you get your record expunged? Well, we found out that only 6% of the people that are eligible for expungement actually did it, because the barriers and the hoops you had to jump through to get your record expunged were so difficult that unless you knew your way around or you had a friend who was a lawyer or somebody that could go through that system, you just didn't do it. So we began a process with our court records to help people get their records expunged. And Mark mentioned the Heinz Endowments. They stepped up again and gave us some money, a grant to be able to help us do this. So we've already expunged over 100 people, and every single one of them that was eligible, we got them expunged. So what does that mean? Well, that means when they go to get a job, that applicant doesn't look and see that there's a record on their background, because they were expunged something that they shouldn't have had to begin with, a charge that was never even filed and went forward. Talked about criminal representation at the arraignment. We have doubled the amount of people who are going to the arraignments with a public defender. 6,400 so far this year have gone through the arraignment. And guess what? Our public defenders have gotten 90% of what they wanted. You know what that means? That means less people are going to jail. 90%. I don't get 90% of my own house when I ask for things for 90%. So that's the kind of thing that we want to continue to do. Matt also makes sure that when a criminal is arrested, when someone is arrested and filed criminal charges against them, that they have somebody there immediately, that they see a lawyer within 24 hours. Those are some of the things that we want to continue to do. These are some of the efforts that'll occur from the administrative side, and I'm sure my county commissioner friends, they'll be able to do that in the various counties that they represent. But they will certainly need the support of their district attorney, of their probation, of the folks that all need to come together. And also a big part of it, and Mark mentioned, was human services. Our Department of Human Services under Mark Cherna and Aaron Dalton also work with people to help get them through this process in a good way. Because, you know, you talk about the cost of the taxpayer, get that, that's what we're there as elected officials, but the cost to the individual. to that individual that can't come up with the $500 or even less to post bail is a cyclical problem that affects not only them but their families. They do possibly lose their job. They do possibly lose their spouse. They do possibly lose their housing and all the associated things that go with it. And it becomes a vicious cycle. So all of us really need to work together. It isn't working the way it is right now, and we've got to continue to make progress. We've made some really good progress because we, at one point, had a high water mark of about 2,800 people that were in our jail. We're down to about 2,400, but we can get that number down. I hope we can get that number down to 600 like they're moving towards in New York City and where they're going, and close Rikers. And wouldn't it be nice if we didn't have the prime piece of real estate in downtown Pittsburgh where we built a jail? When I think about that, when I think about Mayor Peduto, and I talk about that all the time, what were they thinking 30 years ago when they decided to build a jail on a prime piece of real estate? It's not that we want to treat our prisoners well, right? We want to give them the nicest piece of land and the best view of you could have. No, we just didn't have anything going on in Pittsburgh 30 years ago, so we didn't have land that was usable. But wouldn't it be great if we could repurpose that for development and have a much smaller jail, a much smaller facility that can not only just incarcerate people, but do some of the things that can actually turn people around and help them. We can improve public safety. We can keep people safe, but we can also improve people's lives and make things more efficient for all the things that we're going to do. I want to point out a few of the people here today in the county. I mentioned some of them already that have done. Warden Harper and his team, Matt Dugan, Willie McCain. We talked about data. Joanne Forster and her team at the data center. You can't do anything unless you can measure it. You can't make progress unless you have the numbers and know you can measure it. Superintendent Coleman McDonough also as well. I also want to thank the MacArthur Foundation, the Heinz Endowments for the great work that they have done in helping us get to this point and do the things that we need to do. So I thank all of you for being here today. Again, my fellow elected officials, congratulations on your recent elections. For the next 4 years, let's hope all of us in all of our counties can continue to make progress, continue to make things better for the citizens that we represent, the taxpayers that we represent, and the people that need our help the most. Thank you very much, and let's continue to work together.